Hello, everyone. How are you?
Hey. Hi.
Good. Bringing you together here on International Women's Day. I know not everybody thinks it's a worthwhile thing to celebrate, but as my fellow podcasters and women that join me, I do want to celebrate it. But here for talk about an important topic, and
Ugh,
that is
I love that you're just skimming
ambition
past that. Okay, fine.
part two. Everyone who listened to it from a few weeks ago would have heard us recoil a little bit at using the word, which astonished all of us. And we committed to coming back to talk about two things. One is how do we feel coming out of that podcast? What was the feedback that we got, friends, families, others? And the second that I will leave for the end that you're not getting out of is three words to describe ourselves. So, Joe, I'll turn it over to you. What kind of feedback did you see, hear, get from our original discussion on ambition?
So before I do that, I'm going to do something that's going to make you uncomfortable. I'm going to go back to your International Women's Day comment.
Perfect.
I know. You're for those of you who aren't watching this in video, Nina just totally gave me a look through her very sexy glasses. But I will say, I love women. I'm an ally of women. I think I am a woman that's always tried to break some convention, whether it was like being the first female captain of certain things at my high school or athletic. So I'm very pro us breaking the glass ceilings and breaking convention. What I will say is that I get irked by International Women's Day because I do feel like it's superficial. I feel like it's used by brands and other companies to maybe intercept an algorithm or maybe sell us things, and I feel like
Mhm.
the rest of the year, we're not doing things that necessarily support women, whether that's around things like pay parity or even schedules in the workplace. So folks like our friend Lorella here can like pick up kids at the right time from daycare. So there are a variety of things that I think we need to do better at. And I feel like International Women's Day becomes a social media thing and we don't necessarily carry it on to everyday life. So moving
I
on
agree.
from that.
I agree. I have to agree with you, Joe.
Ooh,
Yeah. I
yes.
do I do feel like it's a social media trend versus an actual thing that creates results or change. And that's all I'll say because I feel like you covered a lot of it, but I do agree.
Look at that. I thought I was going to be the outsider. I love that for us. But I then think it's a very good segue into the ambition conversation because I agree with everything that you said, Nina, and breaking the third wall for folks. We sat and talked about this topic for a bit after we recorded our last episode because I think we were all stunned at our own responses or Alexa's like physical recoiling. And I
Yep.
think what's been even more interesting, at least for me since that, is the amount of feedback that we've gotten either from friends of ours who listen to the episode or folks that we don't know who are listeners who have DM'd us. And I think that was what I wanted to dig into a bit. So for anyone that didn't hear the last episode, I've always seen ambition as a positive thing, and I had felt like sometimes the fact that maybe it was so positive that I didn't have the attributes of ambition. Because I think for me, it's always been coached as being something positive. But I think what was validating were some of my perspectives where I do think it's weaponized. Laurel and I received a text from a friend of ours who we've also worked with who gave feedback to us in real time that she had just had it weaponized against her at work. I had gone to see Wuthering Heights, which for the record is full on lady porn. So if anyone hasn't seen it yet,
Noted.
go seen it. I have a whole new appreciation. I'm even getting tongue tied because I'm getting flashbacks of the footage in my head of Jacob O'Leary. Like I thought nothing of him until this
Yeah.
video or this movie, and now I'm again getting flustered and hot and tongue tied. But we went to go see it, and then afterwards she was thankful for our episode, talked through it, and even shared with us that or me that she had a similar response to what Lex did, where she was sitting in a circle at a leadership circle that her work had coordinated. And when they were going through the word ambition and other things, she was physically sitting there saying, "Please don't name me. Please don't name me. Please don't name me." And when I asked her why, she said, "It was going to make me a target, or I felt that it would
Mm,
make me a target." And I thought that was so horrible to hear Like those just two pieces of feedback from two women that I have such high respect for. I've worked with both. I think they're amazing. Like, so there is this weaponization of it and some that we've internalized. So I don't know, I thought that was that's been my experience since our last episode on this.
It's equally comforting as it is disturbing, comforting in the fact that other people apparently
Yeah.
have difficulty saying the word or have the same sort of reaction that we did on our last
Yep.
episode. Please go check it out if you have not listened to it yet. Um, I wanted to shout out to Leah, who used what I thought was an original quote from her, which was, "They want to see you rise, but they don't want to see you reign," of which she immediately corrected me and said it was actually a Taylor Swift quote, which of course I did not know as the one of the
I didn't
non-Swift
know either
in the
when you
group.
sent it. I was like, wow, that's amazing. So
But coming from an incredibly ambitious woman, Taylor Swift, I have to say, I think that does resonate with us, right? You almost hit this almost high, but not high enough, where people then feel that they can kind of tear you down. Lex, what was your experience? What the conversations you had about the word ambition?
I mean, obviously, during that last episode, there was a moment where I had a physiological response. Like I struggled to speak at one moment, and I think I just never realized what that word meant if someone were to call me ambitious. And then when we started talking about it, then I think the true kind of feelings about that word had come through our discussions, but I didn't think about it much before we talked. And then after we spoke, I was like, I need to dig into like why? Why do I feel this way? Why do
yeah.
I not like this word? Why do I recoil from it? Why do I feel like it's so negative? And Jordan, you had mentioned that you thought like maybe Hollywood was a reason why, because we've been
Mhm.
programmed or conditioned to think that ambitious women are negative. And I did
Yeah.
actually look into it, and I read an article that talks about ambitious women in the real world and on screen are presented as glamorous cautionary tales, frequently coded as villainous in film and TV. She represents danger because she doesn't need anyone. Relationships are
Mm,
merely a currency. She
Mm.
prioritizes money, power, and status above all else. And those traits are what we typically see in movies. And it mentioned movies as early as the 1930s that portray women, ambitious women, with these negative characteristics. And like for me, I'm like, no wonder we all, or maybe a lot of us, feel kind of like ashamed about being ambitious because we've seen so many movies where those women are not praised for that trait.
Yeah.
do you have like examples in mind of movies along the
Cruella
lines?
Deville, Cruella Deville, which was 2021. Devil Wears
I love
Prada. We talked about this in the last episode.
Yeah.
Classic. Like there's several movies that women are just. I think it was The Working Girl, maybe in the 80s or 90s. Like
That
That's
was a
one
good
of my
one.
faves.
yeah, and I think also like it's just interesting to see how male characters usually in film that have these similar traits are usually they're interesting character
Celebrated?
arcs, right? Yeah, and they're seen as powerful and determined, and
Hot.
they're applauded usually, right? So it's interesting to see how those two things are very different from one another.
I want to just touch on something because you gave a date. So what was it? 1930, 1933? What did you say? Like,
1933, yeah.
so here's what I find interesting. What was happening around 1933? This is my geek raised in a war, like household military dad type.
No
So think
clue.
about it. Okay, so you are now between World War One and World War Two.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Men go off and fight wars and do all that. Women hold down the home front. Men come back. What do you need to do? You need to put them back in the house. You need to put them back
Mm,
in. So it's a continuation of like the propaganda. So you think of like all that propaganda of like women holding it down. You think of what was that awesome movie where there was no crime? League of Their Own. No crime
right.
in
Oh
baseball.
yeah.
So then you have to then show like, okay, that aspiration or ambition or whatever you now like put it away. You now
Hmm.
have to go back. Otherwise you're going to be one of these women. And I think what's funny is as you're going through all of those movies, and I think you both saw maybe Nina and my reaction, we're like, yes, that was the best. That was whatever. I'm even thinking of the fact that like I really liked Maleficent and I really
Mm-hmm.
they
Yeah.
aren't evil, but they have a different character arc. They want something different. And I do think that there's something really there, especially if you think of the way that like corporate women are portrayed, where we're seen as, barren or heartless because we didn't choose children, but none of that is necessarily true. So I thank you for looking that up because I think that's super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Laurel, what about you? Some feedback.
Yeah, I think that the one thing I think when you first asked, it's probably a word I never really thought about whether or not I kind of like thought of myself as being or had been labeled as. But I think when I like kind of took the last week to think about it, it was more that I think the word right now is used, it's both used positively and negatively, right? And probably both equally. So you have people that are like, hey, you're super ambitious, it's great. And then you have people that are like, hey, you're super ambitious, and it's like a negative connotation. And I don't know if there's other specific adjectives that are similar to that, but I think it's totally dependent on who's using it. Because if your boss is like, you're ambitious, it's great, I want you to do that, it's awesome. But if somebody is like your coworker and they're like, you're ambitious because you're making me look bad because you're more ambitious, it's like you're
Mm-hmm.
doing the same thing at work, right? You're doing the same job, but those people's perceptions of you, it's like they're twisting that word. And so I just thought it was interesting because I think when you raised it, I hadn't thought about it. And so I think it like I have probably have heard it in both contexts. And so I'm not really sure where I land on it right now.
Not to poke the bear, even though you just said I'm not sure where I land, but I will follow up with a question. So you cite sort of the importance of how it might feel if somebody uses it against you. So does that even matter? And like, how deep is that, or can we just turn it around? I know Jordan just gave me a face, like that's a
Does
crazy
that even
question, but
matter?
well, yeah, I'm just thinking like if we can turn that around as a positive thing, like it's actually more about that person's problem and less our problem. Does that
Which I
help reframe it?
I think that's great to say, and I
Yeah.
feel like there's a huge movement now around like that's more reflective of someone else and someone else's problem. But the thing is, it doesn't change the dynamic. So if
Mm,
we stick with the workplace, I think that's where even with some of the responses that we've been getting from some of our friends, that's where we see it the most weaponized against women.
Mm-hmm.
And you think of like some of the movies that Lex referenced, even like Working Girl, Nina, where like
yeah.
I can still remember watching that as a kid. There is a weaponization there, or there's a cautionary tale. So similar to Lex, I was curious, and for some reason, some more of the stats that I found out were more in vein of like what happens corporate. And this is one of the things I thought was interesting. Some of the data that I saw. So one of the stats that I saw was 76% of top performing women receive negative feedback, with just 2% of top performing men. I was like, okay,
That is
that's
stark.
that is really stark. So I was like, let's keep going down this rabbit hole because maybe this feels personal to me. That there is clearly a gender bias. The
Mm.
same behavior is read differently. An assertive or ambitious man is seen as a leader. An assertive or ambitious woman is seen as a problem.
Hmm.
For women, personality is rated over performance. Women's reviews focus more on traits like tone, which we know that I've gotten a few times, confidence, and style. Again, I've
Yeah.
gotten that instead of measurable results.
Hmm.
So, again, where I feel like personally connected to this data is I can look at a clear dashboard around metrics to show performance. But what I typically get anytime I get the feedback, and it's typically when it's been asked for, is that it's my tone or my style, nothing to do with the performance. So
Yeah,
I
or
think
how
it's
But
I'm
is that
sitting
because
at the
like
board table. I feel like it's the same thing with posture and men and the way they sit. And like I have
Right.
the same thing
a
where it's like
man
don't
spread.
cross your arms and sit up straight and don't slouch and don't lean back too far because you look too confident. And I'm like, I don't think that the men in the room are thinking the same thing.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Because you look too confident. let's give everyone a little round of that again. Repeat that.
Yeah, no, I think that like I have definitely got a like feedback on the way you're sitting has like impacted like people's perception of you. And so again, to go back to the like how much do we care about people's perceptions? Like you can't spend your time thinking about that. You do need to understand like how you present and represent yourself.
Yeah.
But I think those pieces of like I think body language is just one other one, Joe, to tag on to
Yeah.
what you're
I'm just
saying.
thinking, like, if we all ignore what the feedback people give us and we just do as we do, does that then give us collectively more confidence to be able to continue in the direction that we want to go without having to look back? That's the only reason I'm
Yeah.
bringing this up.
Mhm.
I realize that's like a very ambitious goal, to use the word. But how else do we progress? I don't understand. All I'm hearing is we're just going to keep recoiling and just accept it. But how do we actually not accept it and reclaim the word?
I
And
don't think
also,
that's
like, how do
go ahead.
how do we change something that's so embedded in our culture, right? Like,
Right.
we all have these stories because it's deep in the way that we, you know, raise our children or the way that we portray people, whether it's characters in movies. Like, there's definitely like something about it that is hard to uproot it or remove it. And I
Yeah.
think it's just because it's been years and years and years. As I mentioned, 1933,
Mm.
we saw those movies coming out with women portrayed as
Yeah.
negative, ambitious characters. Like, so how do we undo that? Like, I think it's great. I think a good first step is, yes, like, try not to worry about what people think about you, as long as obviously within reason, of course. But what's the next step to actually have a change where people start using the word positively and where we
Yeah.
start seeing like successful women portrayed in Hollywood movies and it's a good thing versus a negative thing? Like, I don't know. I struggle with like, how does that real change actually occur?
So I think talking about it and then action is important. So I think even the fact that we're having this conversation is interesting, but I want to go back to something previously. So I think as you guys all know, I've been really focused on a lot of this stuff this year and feedback and other things. And one of the things that I did that I'm proud of myself about is I got a lot of feedback, and instead of immediately reactionary, like being reactive,
Yeah.
or I took some of it, and what I have started to do is in moments where I feel like I'm going to get feedback, either like sitting too confidently, which I think is ridiculous, or other things, I've been going and calling it out and naming it.
Hmm.
So even there are a few things that have happened more recently, and then I've been going and naming it, and then having people come back and say, no, that's not right, or that shouldn't be the case, or I'll let me rephrase that. Or so I think you have to name it and call it back out. I
Can you
think
give
the
an
other,
example of that, Jordan?
sure.
Well, I mean, what do you name it? Like you're saying back to the person what they're saying back to you, or you call
Mm,
it this?
Sure. Okay. I literally just got like armpit sweaty. Okay. So I was in a conversation with someone, and this male individual, I don't want to make it male or female, but I do think that's important. He
Mm.
came into this conversation hot, real hot. Like he was coming in ready for a fight. Um, I don't typically have an issue with that. However, I'm more cautious and cognizant of some of the feedback that I have received about my tone and my style. So I was very conscious about not getting to his level. So I stayed calm. Yes, my armpits were probably still sweating, but nobody saw that. And then there were things that he said that I didn't like in terms of the terminology. So I actually said, I don't like the way that that has been phrased. I don't
Love it.
agree with what that connotation has. And I would like us to rephrase it like this way, this way, this way. So I called it out, I named it, and I adjusted it because fortunately or unfortunately, you become aware of these things as you go. And then I do think it comes to us, again, not necessarily fair, that if you don't want to have that same feedback about tone or style, you have to actively manage it and shift it. Even if you're
Yeah.
reacting the exact same way that that other individual is, we get labeled. It is the way
Hmm.
that it is. And I think the other thing that Lex, you called out that I think is really important, and I've personally been reflecting on this, is you talked about how you're raised. So
Mhm.
I had asked both you mamas, bio mamas, if you were going to instill this in your children.
Mhm.
What I thought was interesting after that is I had a conversation with my mom, who has very much instilled this in us, which is why I
Mhm.
think my sister and I see this as so positive. And it's also shaped a lot of how we perform or function. You guys have called me more driven. I feel more comfortable with that word, but I do think it's because I was raised by an ambitious woman where ambition and going for your dreams was positive. And what I also thought was cool, and this is the last thing that I'll share because I'm obviously on a tangent, is I went back to go look at more of Eileen Gu's content, going back to our Olympic conversation, and she shared the same thing. Her grandmother, who unfortunately passed right after Eileen won that last medal, um, Eileen's grandmother raised her to be ambitious. So much so that it's even in Eileen's name. So when you actually get into the translation and things like that. So I do think when you see women that are raised with it, it does start to change the course. It does start to become more positive. It does start to become part of a dialogue. And I think that that's probably part of what, to your point, Lex, about how do we change it? As we
Mhm.
start to recognize this as women at this stage in the game, at this age, who are women, corporate people, whatever, like, how do we start to do these things so that other women can see it, either feel more comfortable, reframe a conversation? And is that a bit of our responsibility once we recognize it?
Yeah.
And right.
I What's interesting though is that like it was your mom, right? That instilled this ambition in you.
100%.
For me, like it was always my dad because he came from Venezuela at a very young age. He had nothing, barely spoke the language, went to school, worked like just ridiculous jobs, not even in his where he graduated as an engineer. He didn't even work as an engineer until he finally got into the mortgage business, started his own business. Like he's very entrepreneurial. So seeing that I think is what helped me kind of grow up with ambitious traits or
Mm.
driven traits.
I love how
But
you still called it ambitious
I
traits
know.
and not even ambition.
We
Yeah.
also make
Well,
you mean
hey,
margarita.
we're taking back we're taking back the word. Okay.
Baby steps.
Um, but yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to see that like your view of it is positive coming from
Yeah.
your mom,
Mm-hmm.
and my view. Not that my dad had anything to do with changing the way I viewed the word ambitious, but I don't know if it's because it came from my dad and I'm a female that I
Oh,
had kind of
interesting.
this different perception of that word. And the other
Interesting.
thing that I find is interesting is that I was just thinking about Laurel. You talk about the word ambitious being used as a weapon in the corporate space, but why is that the word of choice and not the word driven? Like if someone were to say, like, "Oh my God, you're so driven, Laurel." You're like, "Oh, thanks."
Or motivated.
Yeah, but like you're so ambitious, Laurel. It's like, okay, thanks. So it's interesting that like it's the
Yeah.
choice of that word as well, which is used as a weapon. So
Words have
just
meaning
one.
and words can be
Yeah.
weaponized. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What are those associative words that make you feel good?
Mhm.
What are those words that you want to be known for? And how do we sort of reclaim them or put yourself in those camps? Like the word ambition or ambitching.
So
So
are you
why do
saying
you
that?
think it's important? Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, are you saying that Laurel and I should start using that word? Because I
I th-
think
I feel like
we both still like dance around it, right? We still
yeah,
haven't
you're
said
both
it.
still
Whereas
uncomfortable.
Jordan was like, I'm gonna take back this word. I'm gonna use this word. I'm gonna describe myself as ambitious. Meanwhile, I'm like, I am determined. So here I am again, not embracing it. So I will
I
take that
think
as a
I think you can't but again, like, let's not force any, like, if people don't feel comfortable with it, you don't feel comfortable with it. As a
mm-hmm,
result of what it means to you or what it communicates, how do you feel about that? if there are, in my case, positive attributes that you maybe don't feel like you're on par with, how do you start to work towards that if that's maybe aspirational or part of the goal? If you feel that it's been weaponized in some case, which is a lot of the feedback that we got, is there something that you're going to do to feel more comfortable with it or take that or, de-weapon? I think it depends. Like, I think for us to say, like, be comfortable with using the term is probably just as detrimental as some of the other things that have
Yeah.
come with it or these movies that have been created. And I think what I hear all the time is women that don't feel comfortable writing their own bios, doing their own introduction, like writing about ourselves. I think that's a hard exercise for anyone, but
Totally.
it does
Yeah.
seem to come up more in like the female realm that I'm in. So I think maybe that's the better exercise, the words, the labels. And I think if we all feel that we have been labeled from like teen movies to whatever it is, or you are the good girl or the jock or the bad girl or the slut or the whatever, like there's always been labels. So I think
Mhm.
that's part of what we struggle with more. So maybe that's what we have to be more cognizant of.
I love that.
And if somebody uses the word negatively, then Jordan, you're telling us from your own experience, correct them and say, this is why ambition should be important, or this is why this person has amazing ambitious traits.
Or something as simple as say thank you.
Yeah.
Can you
Totally.
imagine how that would
Totally.
disarm a conversation if
Mhm.
someone
Yeah.
said to you, you're so ambitious, and instead of
Love
taking
that.
that moment of, do you mean this in a positive way? Do you mean it in
Yeah.
a negative way? It doesn't matter because I'm somehow like the thank you. Like, I
Totally.
remember once, and I remember posting this on social and some of my guy friends messaging me to ask if I was okay. I remember getting called a bitch, and my response was, "Thank you." And I posted it on social, and some of my guy friends were like, "Are you okay right now?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm great."
Love
Because
that.
I immediately was like, somebody's calling me that. So whether it's ambitious or whatever it is, or using a word, you're trying to weaponize something against me or make me feel a certain way because of a word. The
Love
only
Yeah.
way
that.
that has any power is if I give you that power or make you think you've got me.
Right.
Versus I've done something to rub you the wrong way and maybe I feel good about that.
Yeah.
Again, not being an asshole as
Power
Laura.
in that.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my and maybe we just say thank you.
Well, on that note, thank you, ladies, for coming together. Episode 2 on ambition. It sounds like there might be an episode 3 in the future.
I still got work
Coming
to do.
back to this.
Yeah.
For all listeners, please continue to like, subscribe this episode, leave us a message. Let us know what the word ambition means to you. We want to hear from our community, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. And for all the
See ya.
mamas and papas out there, be okay with teaching your kids to be ambitious if you feel so inclined, whether it's Senior Wolf or my mom or whomever. Go for it.
Yeah.
Next gen.
Thanks for being part of the After Call. If this felt familiar, you're not alone. Hit subscribe, leave us a comment, and share this episode with a friend. See you next time for more real talk about the beautiful, messy chaos of life.